I just always, as a young kid, started drawing quite young, and I started drawing like Disney characters and Madonna and silly things like that that kids kind of draw, and then it just evolved into more, and then I just kept working, and I got into the Royal College of Art, which is one of the it's like the top art school in the world. So for my degree, I actually did a pretty general course called creative arts. So you could pick like two different subjects, and I picked textiles and fine art. So I did very general fine art like painting, and I did printmaking, and then I also did textiles. So like that's when I really got into screen print, and I fell in love with screen print very early on. And it's a very it's a process that puts a lot of people off, because you have to do a lot of preparation work, preparing your artwork, and it's messy, and there's these kind of negative sides to it, or people see it that way. I just love that kind of like process and building up to it, and then this amazing artwork that comes out of it. So that I would have the whole studio pretty much to myself to work, me and like two other people. So then I really got into screen printing, and then it just kind of evolved. And then I did my master's program in printed textiles, because I really wanted to have more of a vocation and something that I could really see myself actually getting work in when I came out, rather than just doing fine art painting and and being like, well, how can I really make any kind of money? So it was almost kind of a practical thinker in a lot of ways, So that's kind of how I got into textiles. I mean, I was always interested in color, just in drawings, and in some clothing, but really, as far as really where it started to happen was on my degree course when I started screen printing with neon. And I just found these neon paints, and they were just like the best thing I'd ever got my hands on. And I've still been using neon all these years, which is nearly 20 years. And now it's and I have periods where there's like other colors that that these prints behind us aren't actually neon. So those kind of neon, I just feel like takes color to another level. It's kind of a spiritual level, really, because it's just that kind of brightness, and then you get in the black light, and it's a whole other thing. It's just alive. So I love that about those colors. Yeah. Well, I graduated in 2001, and I did about 2 years. I was teaching for like 3 days a week at a university up in the north of England, Newcastle. I also did a bit of teaching at the Royal College where I taught, and then I also did some work with Isabella Blow for her shoots with Tatler, and then I also did some work with Gucci. Lots of different things, but none of them were really making any money. Like, you just wouldn't get paid, or the clothing wouldn't get returned, or they said they were going to pay you and they wouldn't pay you, and it was just that whole carry, and I was just like, I just can't deal. And I'd been to New York twice with my boyfriend at the time, and I just fell in love with it, and my cousin was living here. That's kind of how I kind of really got over here, and then kind of things went on from there, My first job, I came over my portfolio with not really that much money, and I needed to get a job pretty quickly. I didn't have working papers straight away. So I just started going to agencies, and within like 2 weeks they said, oh, there's a great job at Calvin Klein which we want to put you forward for. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was thinking, well, Calvin Klein, that's really not like my aesthetic, because even though my world is very neon now, it was back then, but on much smaller scale. Like, I mean, I was still kind of really forming my aesthetic, but I was like, that's not really my aesthetic. But I thought, I guess I'll go for it. And I went, and I got the job like really quickly, and they did my papers, and I was there for 5 years. So I was print designer for Calvin Klein jeans. I met some great people, and it was before the recession, so we went like around the world and went to like Tokyo shopping, and India and Berlin, and it was just a really great experience. Yeah, and now I feel like I'm really coming back to, after really spending all that time doing corporate fashion as well as my own fashion, coming more back to really where I was on my degree, which is kind of really making art as well, and kind of really completing, creating my vision, which is to create a whole kind of world environment. So there's like things on art on the walls, clothing, on people, interiors, lighting. I really want to create a whole world. Started working with Patricia Fields, and we're doing all of this, one of a kind, which I was doing already, but it's really taking it to another level, because just working with Pat, she has all these connections and a global connections that just takes it to another level, and I like to be kind of part of that art family. Not that I get to see all the people all the time, but to be part of that group. And I respect the artists I work with a lot, and and really look up to them as well. And we're great peers together. So that's really cool. And So, and also I'm now doing these digital prints, which at the moment you can see them around. And now I have a couple more in the work. Like I'm actually working on President Obama at the moment, which I think is, it's kind of a great time to do it now that he's gone, because I feel like people need to see him more than ever. I like the idea of doing women that were like real trailblazers and kind of really kind of fierce and, and kind of really just made their way in a man's world. So that's really where all these came from. And then David Bowie just kind of stands out because he's David Bowie. Yeah, so these pieces are constantly evolving, and what's great about these is it's taking the hand-drawn elements, and like all the faces are drawn by hand and then they're taken into Photoshop. The original idea for these was to take, like if you look at the Joan Rivers one, which was the first one I did, was to take her clothing, where she was just wearing like a beige, I don't know, like a beige blazer, and all these people were just wearing black and beige and grey, basically. And the idea was to take their black and beige clothing and put my prints within them, and the portraits were going to kind of work as like fashion shoots, but it ended up involving something completely different. And they ended up becoming like, kind of in a way, these kind of grand portraits, that you might see in a museum, but done in a kind of in a new way. So that's kind of really where they're at. I'm also on the verge of getting back into painting again. So that's like kind of a new thing. It's just constantly evolving. I see it as a life's work, and I hope to do it until the day I drop in my 90s or maybe older, who knows, but we'll see.